This is a TalkStation original podcast.
I'm Captain Mark with this week's Boating Safety Minute brought to you by your U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary, right here in Morehead City, where the water temperature this week will be around 70 degrees. Using Channel 16, when should a boater make a distress call? When an emergency situation threatens the well-being of people or property. What is the difference between the three distresses? Mayday is used for urgent situations only. Pon-pon is used in dangerous situations that could become urgent. Sécurité is used by authorities to advise others of general situational information. Local notice to mariners. Barton Inlet buoys number 26 and 27 off station. Buoy number 28 missing. These Boating Safety Minutes are a public service of your U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary. I'm Captain Mark, and remember, an educated boater is a safe boater.
Looking for the best adventure on the Crystal Coast? Step aboard with H2O, Captain Eco Tour, private boat excursions, and experience the coast like never before. Cruise the Intracoastal Waterway. Search for wild horses on Shackleford Banks and the Rachel Carson Reserve. Spot playful dolphins, explore hidden shelling beaches, and enjoy unforgettable sunsets. Every trip is a private eco tour for up to 6 passengers, led by a U.S. Coast Guard 100-ton licensed master captain and authorized tour guide of the National Park Service and Rachel Carson Reserve. Perfect for families, couples, and visiting friends. Book your adventure today at h2ocaptain.com. That's h2ocaptain.com. H2O Captain, where the Crystal Coast comes alive. Welcome aboard.
Ahoy there! Welcome aboard the Scoop Deck, your home for local stories, coastal conversations, and the voices shaping life right here in Eastern North Carolina. I'm Captain Mark, and today we're diving into something that surrounds all of us, but maybe doesn't always get the attention it deserves: our coastal environment. From our marshes to estuaries, to the waters we fish and boat in, the health of this ecosystem plays a huge role in our way of life here on the coast. Joining us today is Ben Wunderly. Ben works on the front lines of protecting some of the most important natural areas while helping ensure they can still be enjoyed for generations to come. Today we're going to talk about what he does, why it matters to you, and what's really happening out there in the waters and marshes we all love. So whether you're out on the boat, walking the shoreline, or just listening in, stay with us. Ben Wunderly is the Central Sites Manager for the North Carolina Coastal Reserve and National Estuarine Research Reserve, Division of Coastal Management, North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality. Welcome to the Scoop Deck, Ben Wunderly.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We're excited to have you. I'm excited to say all 24 words of your title. Your business card must be printed on the front and back just to have that whole title in there. In full disclosure, before we talk to Ben, I must say that one of my companies, H2O Captain Eco Tour Private Boat Excursions, has a special use authorization permit from the Rachel Carson Reserve. So Ben, for folks who may not be familiar, what exactly is the Coastal Reserve and National Estuarine Research Reserve, and what does your role as the Central Sites Manager involve? Please give us a day in the life of Ben Wunderly.
Sure. To answer the first part of your question, what is the Coastal Reserve? What we have in North Carolina is a partnership between the state of North Carolina's Division of Coastal Management and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which is a federal entity. Together, they basically comprise this coastal reserve system. So the partnership aspect from the federal side of things is some funding. And then the state side of it, the coastal management side, is staffing, administration, and covering the physical work that takes place on these sites. There are 10 of them across the North Carolina's coast, from Currituck County all the way to Brunswick County, and the farthest inland site is actually at the headwaters of the Alligator River, kind of borders Terrell and Washington counties. My role as the central sites manager is I cover 2 of those sites, 2 out of the 10. One of them receives federal funding, and that is the Rachel Carson Reserve, that we're going to get a little more in depth here in a second. And then the other one is the Bermuda Island Reserve, which is just receiving state funding, and that is in neighboring Onslow County in Stump Sound, due west of North Topsail Beach, right off of the Intercoastal Waterway.
Why should residents care about the coastal reserve, and how does it affect their everyday lives?
Well, for those immediate neighbors to, for example, the Rachel Carson Reserve, that would be mostly people in the town of Beaufort and along the waterfront. This particular site, the Rachel Carson Coastal Reserve, is providing opportunities for minimizing storm effects. So through buffering wave action that may be coming in through the inlet and Beaufort Inlet, to absorbing that energy and dissipating it before it directly hits waterfront property in Beaufort along Taylor's Creek, and for erosion control, that barrier or buffer in front of the town of Beaufort has a direct impact on those types of extreme weather events and situations that could in turn be affecting property and structures there in town. Otherwise, the folks that are in the surrounding county or may just be coming to visit us, these reserves provide an opportunity to get outdoors and experience the coastal habitats and natural environment as they exist.
Which I guess brings me to my next question. I discussed a symbol of the United States of America, the American bald eagle, as well as ospreys last week with Congressman Greg Murphy, who was here on the Scoop Deck. How does the Rachel Carson Reserve support wildlife and biodiversity? You said how it affects its people around the area, but tell me about the wildlife and biodiversity on Rachel Carson Reserve.
Yeah, the biodiversity is kind of an example of the pristine environment. Having those coastal habitats like the salt marshes, the tidal flats, the sand dune and beach areas, and the maritime forest available to such wildlife, it's giving them an opportunity to find, whether it's shelter or predominantly a food source for them. So these particular animals, no matter what they are, they could be the large predatory birds that you mentioned. They could be small invertebrates in the mud and in the sand down in the marsh. It's important to them to have these areas so that they can just basically survive. There's a whole connectivity of the food chain, if you will, from the bottom all the way to the top, and it wouldn't be possible if we didn't have something like the Coastal Reserve.
And at the reserve, what would you say are some of the biggest environmental challenges you're seeing right now along this part of the coast? Is it water quality, development by humans, factory farm animal runoff, storm impacts? What's your thought about that?
Probably the most obvious one is storm impacts. For folks living in the area and along the coast, we deal with it every year. Anytime there's a tropical storm or hurricane or even a really bad nor'easter storm, Those are directly affecting these coastal reserve sites, in addition to any land masses and habitats along the coast. So increased wave action, strong winds, this can lead to erosion. It can lead to sedimentation. You may have a creek or channel through the water and through the marsh areas, and they can get filled in too from the waves and currents moving that sand. So those are probably maybe the biggest thing that we see on a month-to-month, potentially even week-to-week basis, those kinds of changes due to those impacts. We are seeing water level changes, increased water level changes that will have a effect on the habitats as well. Areas that were maybe only submerged at high tide that could be being submerged at low tide as well now. So I think we're in a event right now that we call the king tides, where the tides are a bit higher than normal. So those seem to be trending upwards and could essentially change the makeup of the habitats within the reserve, or at least change their boundaries. Areas that were once tidal flats may be more submerged and just become completely aquatic. Areas that were marsh grasses and intertidal could see some changes in where that grass, is trying to survive and moving inland somewhat. And so those are things that we talk about. And then as well, how that would affect the wildlife.
Are those changes due to climate change?
I'm not a climatologist, so I can't really speak to that. But I think the monitoring and recording over the years, we have seen increased storm activity. The storms have been coming and going for many years, but we tend to look in a little bubble of our current situation of the last few decades or whatever. But I'm sure we'll see more storms as time goes on.
What educational opportunities does the reserve provide for local residents as well as visitors?
Yeah, the reserves are open to the public. The Rachel Carson Reserve is accessible by boat or kayak or canoe or stand-up paddleboard. There's options to get over there. We do have a designated nature trail on one of the islands. A brochure, self-guided interpretive brochure is available from our website. If you utilize the approved water taxi service from Front Street, they can also give you a copy of the interpretive guide. But we do offer educational programs and activities for audiences in the summertime. We have an educator on staff that will take summer camp groups over there, and we'll lead a few trips that are open to the public. And then in the fall and spring, we're typically taking school groups over. Schools from Carteret County, but as well from Onslow, Craven, Pamlico, some school groups even as far as the Triangle area, and we take them over and they get an educational experience to learn about the plants and the animals that call the reserve their home.
Wow, so public access to the reserve is very important then to the local community with all these school groups coming in. How does the reserve help preserve the area's coastal heritage, and what is that heritage?
For those that have delved into reading or about the history of the area, we know that Carteret County and Beaufort, particularly with right there in proximity to the reserve, have traditionally been fishing communities. The reserve preserves that interest in that fishing can take place within the boundary. Some of the historical documents and even imagery, older photographs showcase the reserve area in them, and you can see fishing boats anchored around the islands, fishing nets being dried within what is the Rachel Carson Reserve today. Those traditional uses that are still permitted, we have that in our mission, is to allow for these types of things that have been happening for years that locals have been carrying on for some time now. So.
What role does the reserve play in scientific research and decision-making, and how does that affect our local communities?
In addition to offering educational opportunities to the public and visitors, whether they're coming from out of town and school groups, a main mission of the reserve is to provide an area for research. What that looks like is anybody that wants to study a particular phenomenon, a plant species or animal species, and or interactions amongst both of them, or the habitats themselves and how they're affected by weather events and water quality. We have an opportunity for that. There are several university marine science labs directly in the same county, and they can apply for a research permit. We review the permit. They can conduct their work. Sometimes it's semester projects, sometimes it's a year, sometimes it's 2 years. And that they in turn are producing some type of research that could be valuable to us in making decisions on how we manage for particular plants or animals and events within the reserve boundary. So these are things that we ask, like what the end result of their project is and what it hopes to do and how we benefit from it, because we can use that information. I mean, that's kind of new firsthand research that is kind of right in our back door, that a lot of people don't get that opportunity to utilize that kind of stuff, but they're in our neighborhood and we need that information. So that's how that all kind of plays out.
I know one of the groups in the neighborhood is NOAA, who you mentioned earlier in this podcast, that they are one of your federal partners for the Rachel Carson Reserve. NOAA was affected last year through DOGE in losing quite a number of its researchers there. How has that affected or not affected the Rachel Carson Reserve?
I don't believe that we were directly affected by the loss of any of the positions that were at the NOAA lab on Pivers Island and Beaufort. I'm not too familiar with what research they may be doing out of the site, if any. I know that most of our research is conducted by University of North Carolina's Institute of Marine Science, North Carolina State Center for Marine Science and Technology, Duke University's Marine Lab, UNC Wilmington, East Carolina University, and maybe a few other of the state universities. So yeah, I don't know that we had a direct impact from that.
Any federal grants that got pulled back that you know of?
From my understanding, it wasn't related to the Department of Government Efficiency, but budget proposals had zeroed out money for the reserves. But Congress comes in and makes the final say on how the money's spent, and they were able to secure funding that would continue the management of these National Estuarine Research Reserve sites, and that was across the country.
Got it. Besides your partnership with NOAA, please share with us any partnership that you may have with the Cape Lookout National Seashore.
Sure. I mean, they are our neighbors on the south side of the Rachel Carson Reserve, and we partner with them, working together when we're talking about some of the wildlife management and natural resource management specifically. So we both share similar types of habitat, and we both conduct similar types of surveys and monitoring, whether it's for colonial water birds and other shore nesting birds, and as well as the wild horse herds that exist both at Cape Lookout Seashore and the Rachel Carson Reserve. So we have biologists on staff that are sharing information and may even from time to time help out physically with this type of work.
How can locals get involved with or support the Rachel Carson Reserve?
People can volunteer. We do have cleanup events from time to time where we're trying to remove as much marine debris as possible. It's kind of an ongoing problem, so we're always looking for help with that. We have groups that like to come annually and volunteer, and they help do some of our maintenance on our nature trail. We also have a stewardship program, a site steward program, where someone that may dedicate a little more time or expertise in particular work related to natural resource management, they go that extra mile and want to learn and really help us out with some of the monitoring work or surveys related to plant or animal management programs that we conduct there.
Fantastic. We will put Ben's and the Rachel Carson Reserve website address on our website, thescoopdeck.com. So Ben Wunderly, thank you for joining us here on the Scoop Deck and for your work you're doing to help protect such an important part of life here on the coast. It's easy to take these beautiful waters and landscapes for granted, but conversations like this remind us of just how important it is to preserve them for future generations. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, please be sure to share it. And as always, you can catch this and all conversations anytime at thescoopdeck.com or wherever you get your podcast. To Ken Weissman, thank you for your wonderful music. To Ross, our producer and engineer, thank you for your expertise. If your company wishes to advertise on the Scoop Deck, please contact us at thescoopdeck.com. The Scoop Deck will be going on hiatus for a few weeks, so during this time, keep your lines tight, your compass ready, and we'll see you right here on the Scoop Deck soon again, where you can tell them you heard it here first. Until next time, I'm Captain Mark, out.
Looking for the best adventure on the Crystal Coast? Step aboard with H2O, Captain Eco Tour, private boat excursions, and experience the coast like never before. Cruise the Intracoastal Waterway. Search for wild horses on Shackleford Banks and the Rachel Carson Reserve. Spot playful dolphins, explore hidden shelling beaches, and enjoy unforgettable sunsets. Every trip is a private eco tour for up to 6 passengers, led by a U.S. Coast Guard 100-ton licensed master captain and authorized tour guide of the National Park Service and Rachel Carson Reserve. Perfect for families, couples, and visiting friends. Book your adventure today at h2ocaptain.com. That's h2ocaptain.com. H2O Captain, where the Crystal Coast comes alive. Welcome aboard.
I'm Captain Mark with this week's Boating Safety Minute brought to you by your U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary, right here in Morehead City, where the water temperature this week will be around 70 degrees. Using Channel 16, when should a boater make a distress call? When an emergency situation threatens the well-being of people or property. What is the difference between the 3 distresses? Mayday is used for urgent situations only. Pon-pon is used in dangerous situations that could become urgent. Securite is used by authorities to advise others of general situational information. Local notice to mariners. Barton Inlet buoys number 26 and 27 off station. Buoy number 28 missing. These boating safety minutes are a public service of your U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary. I'm Captain Mark, and remember, an educated boater is a safe boater.